Now, this is module 2, lecture 1, which is going to address the types and techniques of financial statement analysis. Before carrying all of you to the different types and techniques of financial statement analysis, let me delve into the financial statement analysis and its very objective. When you are going to talk about financial statement analysis, essentially it facilitates the different stakeholders to execute informed decision in a rational way related to their manifold objectives for which they are going to make use of different financial items which are getting reflected in the financial statements, namely the income statement, the balance sheet, the cash flow, the funds flow, whatever they may be, because there are different orientations through which the companies resort to disseminate their financial information during a particular financial year. But at the same time, when you are looking at the stakeholders community, the objectives are so varied and so diverse that a single orientation, a single approach, a single technique or a single type of analysis is not going to serve the varied purpose and objectives of a vulnerable world so far as the stakeholders are concerned. Namely, when you are going to talk about internal users, when you are going to talk about external users, they are having absolutely distorted objectives. They are carrying different ideologies when they are making use of financial information extracted from financial statements of different genre to serve their customized objective. Now, that is the reason why over the years, by the passage of time, different types of financial statement analysis came into the forefront. Now, to talk about different types, essentially why there are so many types of financial statement analysis, the answer simply lies in the fact that different analysis serves different purposes and they have different level of contributions so far as the financial decision making process is concerned. Because whatever may be the type of financial statement analysis, one thing is common, that as a consequence or as the end output of financial statement analysis, we are there to lead to a situation or condition where as stakeholders community we are there to take decisions with the best possible accuracy. So that is why, on the contrary, when you are going to talk about decisions, we all know that they are related to an unknown world, because decisions have a bearing to the future of a business. So when you are going to delve into the unknown world of future to which each and every business is exposed to, we are there to adopt a versatile approach and we are there to make use of all possible types of financial statement analysis as and when we are getting the opportunity to make use of a particular type of financial statement analysis which best fits our formidable objective. So to start with, when you are going to talk about types of financial statement analysis, we are decomposing the same by using different rational bases. There are different bases used, we will be discussing the same. There are as a whole 8 different bases which I am going to address, but apart from that there are also some other bases which I will be addressing at the end of this particular lecture. To start with, the first subcategory of financial statement analysis, that is based on the material used. So on the basis of materials used, when you are going to put thrust on the quantum of material used, definitely you are going to raise a question with regard to the accessibility to all sorts of materials. Now, on the basis of material used, when we say that what type of financial statement analysis are there, the answer is external analysis and internal analysis. When you are going to talk about external analysis, it is mainly the periphery of those users of financial information or stakeholders of the business ecosystem who are deprived of getting direct access to the internal financial records which are getting generated on a perpetual succession in the company. So, as because they are not able to get any direct access to those internal financial information or records through which they would be able to have glimpse of different financial variables, different financial data. So, they have no choice but to go for external analysis, and external analysis is simply used by investors, creditors, then credit suppliers in the form of capital, then the consumers, then the market analysts. They are all making use of external analysis because they didn't get any direct access to have all those internal records. But on the contrary, when you are going to talk about internal analysis is the periphery of the employees who are part and parcel of a company, the managers who are looking after different aspects of the company, then the other members who are having access to the internal records. Now, here I would like to make a mention of the fact that there is always a contention whether external analysis is more accurate or internal analysis is more accurate. It is very difficult. It is a subjective orientation, because one cannot outrightly come to a conclusion that external analysis is better off compared to internal analysis. This is not the fact. So, it is dependent on the conditions and the situations, on the objectives, on the extent and magnitude of accessibility to financial information or financial variables, which is going to talk about whether the external analysis is having an edge or having a niche over the internal analysis or the vice versa. Now, moving further, the next basis which is used to decompose the financial statement analysis is on the basis of method of operation or modus operandi. Now, when you are going to talk about the modus operandi or the method of operation, there prevails horizontal analysis and vertical analysis. When you are going to talk about horizontal analysis, it is more popularly known as dynamic financial statement analysis, because here we are taking into consideration different period of time. It is not getting confined to a particular time period, rather it accommodates n number of time periods. So, it is otherwise interpreted as dynamic owing to the simple logic that when we are going to see and access a particular financial variable over a period of time, obviously we are there to witness changes in the values those financial variables assume at different point of time. So, that flexibility or dynamics can only be addressed through horizontal analysis. On the contrary, when you are going to talk about vertical analysis, here the time period is 1, but the number of companies can be many, and it is also more popularly known as static analysis. Why do you call it static analysis? Because there is no element of fluctuation or change with regard to the financial variables, because we are sticking to a particular year, we are sticking to a particular span of time. We may accommodate n number of objects, we may accommodate n number of companies. So, under vertical analysis, when you are going to go for the method of operation, again there prevails contention, there are arguments, there are debates with regard to the fact whether horizontal financial statement analysis is better off so far as informed financial decision making is concerned, or vertical analysis. It is very difficult to comment and assert anything outrightly because of the same logic that at times horizontal analysis comes very handy and robust to comply to the customized objectives with which a stakeholder is using this method of operation, but at times it may be vertical analysis which is going to reap fruitful outcomes when it comes to financial decision making process. Then there comes the third basis which is used to decompose or classify financial statement analysis, that is on the basis of entities involved. When we are going to talk about entities involved, there prevails cross-sectional analysis and time series analysis. Now, in cross-sectional analysis, again we are sticking to a particular span of time, but over here we have many objects to be studied. I will be discussing the same in detail subsequently in this lecture. Now, as intro, let me make a mention of the fact that cross section means here we are going to play with n number of companies for a particular financial year, that is essentially a cross section, and it is very popular when we are looking at a stakeholder like competitors, because in this oligopolistic conditions of the economy, always the competitors are there to keep an eye on their peers. So, they mostly resort to cross sectional analysis to execute different policies, to devise different strategies to win over their peers. So, it may not be that useful for an investor, because investors do not pay any heed attention to their peers. What other investors are doing, how are they reading between the lines of a financial statement, they are not at all bothered. Rather, they are backed by their own whims, they are backed by their own knowledge, their own level of understanding and exposure. So, what I mean to say is that when we are talking about cross-sectional analysis, it may be very good and handy for one category of stakeholder, it may not be that robust with regard to other category of stakeholders. Then moving further, the time series analysis. When we are going to talk about time series analysis, this is one of the most extensively type of financial statement analysis used in the world of finance so far as financial decision making is concerned, because just in the intro slide orientation I talked about the essence of delving into the unknown world, because whenever we are making use of the term decisions or financial decisions, it has nothing to do with past or present, rather it is absolutely conditional upon the future of a company or the future of a business. So, when you are going to go for time series analysis, there are different types of models with a blend of statistics and mathematics are made available nowadays, through which you can make a journey into the unknown world of the company, so called future of a company, by developing causal relationship between and among variables, then spreading as well as identifying or digging out different trends which were witnessed in the yesteryears, and on the basis of those trends and causal relationship which were witnessed, by having an analysis of the past time series, we can be in a better position to say and predict or foresee about the future states of affairs of a company. Moving further, the fourth basis is on the basis of time horizon. Now, when we are talking about time horizon, indirectly we are talking about the near future and the far future of a company. Just now I said that decision is related to future, but now the question comes whether we are going to take decisions which is conditional upon the near future, or we are resorting to financial decisions which is going to accommodate the far future of a company. Because the more you are going far from today, the more hazy and the likelihood of correctness or exactness of financial decisions are going to be more distorted, because that is one of the very essence of the world of statistics and the world of probabilities, that the more we are looking for, the more we are intending to predict the future standing from today, the more hazy it is going to be. So, in the world of business, when you are going to talk about future, we are decomposing the same into two different facets. Exclusively we are going to talk about the near future or short term horizon, and we are going to talk about the far future or long term horizon. Accordingly, in the financial statement analysis, there are different tools and techniques available through which we can make a journey into the near future to understand the behavior of financial variables, the behavior of financial states of affairs, and the status of a company in the near future. Similarly, there are different tools and techniques available through which we can make a journey into the far future, and whenever we are going to talk about far future, it is the long term analysis, and whenever we are going to talk about the near future, we are resorting to short term analysis. Moving further, on the basis of material used, let us get into some little detail with regard to all those 8 subcategories of financial statement analysis in totality. Now, just in the introductory orientation, when I talked about external analysis, I said that all those users of financial information who are deprived of any access to the internal financial record which is generated in the business, namely all the outsiders, because we have had discussions about the users of financial statement in the first module of the said course, the potential investors, the financial analysts, the government, the data accumulators, the customers, the suppliers, the creditors, they are all falling under the external users community, and external users community cannot get direct access to the internal record. And as we all know that the internal financial records are to be maintained with absolute state of secrecy and authenticity, and the companies are thriving their best to ensure that none of their sensitive information related to finance get disseminated before it is released in the public domain. So that's why those who are not able to access to the internal financial records or financial information, they have no choice but to go for external analysis by using those information or financial data which are made public by the companies through the dissemination of different types of statements, namely income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, funds flow, and any other which are there finding a place in the public domain so far as dissemination of financial information is concerned. But at the same time, there are certain companies who are also not only disclosing their information, getting restricted to only the regulatory compliance which we know, otherwise known as the mandatory disclosure, but nowadays there are many companies who are also disclosing their financial states of affairs related to other aspects than the financial orientation under the voluntary disclosure domain. So, it is the external analysis which is more or less hovering around all those information, whether it is getting disseminated as a consequence to mandatory disclosure or it is getting disseminated as a consequence to voluntary disclosure. But obviously, when we are going to talk about external analysis, as because the quality, the authenticity and the reliability of information which are a prerequisite to the dissemination of financial information in public domain, obviously the external analysis is very pertinent and it normally serves the very purpose of different external users of financial information so far as their decisions are concerned. It is rather, we may say, that external analysis also to certain extent restricts the adversarials to financial statement, which I discussed in the module 1 of this particular course, because those information which are getting disseminated in the public domain, they are easy prey to adversaries, and through adversarial financial orientations, there are different companies who are resorting to different sort of practices, which I discussed, like deceptive disclosure, selective disclosure, then non-compliance to the regulatory framework, then intentional distortion, then manipulations, whatever they may be. But when it comes to public domain, even the companies are very cautionary, because one way or the other that reflects the very image of a company. Because if a company is found to disseminate any information in the public domain which is extensively used as a part and parcel of external analysis, that is going to damage the credibility and the reputation of the company. So, to a certain extent, the external analysis is a good orientation, is a good approach at the end of the external users who are heavily relying and resorting to this particular approach. On the contrary, when you are talking about internal analysis, we all know that the internal financial records are not that reliable and accurate. It may be a very subjective comment, but as an academician we may arrive at an assertion that when different informations are getting accumulated internally, people have a very casual approach that okay, if something has gone wrong, we are having that liberty to set it right. So, getting access to the internal financial records at times may distort and undermine the financial statement analysis. There are also prevalences like this, because during the financial year there are different internal financial records have been generated on a perpetual succession. If a particular internal user is getting access to all sorts of internal financial records and financial data, it may so happen that he got access to some financial records before 3 months, but at the end of the year when it is getting compiled and consolidated, the facts and figures have been modified. So, the internal users are in a dilemma. They are, to a certain extent, they are in a crossroad so far as the use and application of internal financial records, because internal financial records are not regularly scrutinized, are not regularly audited as per the prevailing practices. So, there may be the prevalence of some contents which are in a state of dilution so far as internal financial records are concerned. So, internal analysis is getting executed through the use and application of internal financial records, but we cannot outrightly say that all the internal financial records are not up to the mark, or they are not ready to be used for the purpose of financial decision making as a part and parcel of internal analysis. It is rather a biased statement to say so, but pragmatically there prevails some sort of arguments, there prevails some sort of contention so far as the internal financial record is concerned, and on the contrary the financial records which are disseminated in the public domain, which is leading to external analysis. Moving further, on the basis of method of operation, in the intro I talked about horizontal analysis and vertical analysis in brief. Now, let us make a deep dive into the horizontal and vertical analysis. As I said in the intro part that there is horizontal analysis and it is more popularly known as dynamic analysis. Now, each and every decisions are vulnerable to that element of dynamism which each and every financial variable witness. we all know that the financial decisions, if it is going wrong or if it is not fitting into or if it is not serving the very purpose for which the financial decision gets executed, at the core of it always it is the vulnerability or the changeability or the dynamics associated with those financial variables. So, that is why it is said, if really one need to delve into the future, which is more or less governed by future conditions, market sentiments, assumptions and all these things, when we are resorting to the task of financial forecasting for the purpose of making a rational decisions related to financial states of affairs, it is the prerequisite, rather it is a priority on the part of the stakeholders or users of financial information is to handle that dynamism which is there imbibed in the financial variables. So, horizontal analysis sufficiently serves that purpose in a very cogent manner, because when you are going to play with n number of periods or a span of time which may accommodate 5 years, which may accommodate 10 years, which may accommodate n number of years, then we are in a better position to comment and establish any causal relationship between and among different financial variables to read the future states of affairs in the financial orientation. If we are going to talk on the contrary about vertical analysis, which is more popularly known as static analysis, that particular content is missing, because in vertical analysis we are restricting ourselves to a particular financial year or to a particular period which is very specific. Though here we are taking n number of objects, like say for example, I am going to make an analysis of the IT companies in India during the financial year 24-25. So, that is one of the example of vertical analysis. When you are going to talk about IT companies, I may take a sample of 20 IT companies from among all the IT companies getting registered in India with a register of companies. So, when I am taking in one hand the 20 IT companies as a sample and I am taking one financial year, that is 2024-25, all these financial variables pertaining to individual IT companies, they are static. So, executing an analysis can only lead to a comparative orientation so far as vertical is concerned. It cannot talk about the vulnerability or changeability in financial variables with regard to the IT companies. But on the contrary, when we are going to talk about horizontal, we are in a position to address that changeability, because we are taking n number of periods. Like if I am there to execute an analysis of financial performance of cement industries in India from 2021 to 2025. So, here I am accommodating 5 different financial years. I may take n number of companies at the same time and I may take n number of time periods. So, that is the beauty of horizontal analysis, and that is why it is most extensively and celebrated approach to financial statement analysis. Then moving further, on the basis of entities involved, in the intro part I talked about cross section analysis and I talked about time series analysis. To a certain extent, when we are talking about cross section analysis, we are considering n number of companies and we are restricting ourselves to a particular time period. It is very handy and robust when we talk about a stakeholder or user of financial information like financial analyst, like the competitors, because, or to a certain extent you may say investors who are almost on the verge of taking a decision with regard to an act of investment in the protocol of devising a portfolio. So, when in the process of devising a portfolio, potential investors is into the process to pick and choose companies from out of the available lot, they are resorting to a cross sectional analysis, because they are not rather more concerned about a long span of time and to study the changeability, rather they are more focused on what is happening right now with all these companies who are competing with each other so far as attracting the potential investors. So, from the point of view of a potential investor, it may so happen that cross-sectional analysis solves the purpose so far as arriving at a rational investment decision. But on the contrary, when you are talking about time series analysis, it is very popular among those serious analysts, because they are of the opinion that you cannot judge, you cannot evaluate a particular financial variable by considering a single time period, because it may so happen due to unfavorable conditions in the economy or in the business ecosystem, that particular financial variable is almost unfavorably performed. On the contrary, it may so happen that due to exaggerated and very favorable market conditions, a particular financial variable is showing a very high value. So, there are two extremes, because what is the financial variable and what value it is going to assume, it is more or less conditional upon the market or the economy or the business ecosystem. So, a single period analysis does not practically lead to a proper synthesis and evaluation of that financial variable, which ultimately leads to establishment of causal relationship. But on the contrary, when you are going to talk about time series, definitely it contributes quite significantly to unfold the intricacies which is there imbibed in those financial variables, because financial variables studied over a span of time reflects the realistic movement, and to dig out the causality or the causal impact, it is always contributing significantly in a robust manner. Moving further, on the basis of time horizon, long term analysis, short term analysis, they are more or less addressing the near future and far future. They have their own merits and they have their own deficiencies or loopholes, or you may say lacuna, because short term analysis put together leads to long term, that we all study when we are talking about short term and long term. We cannot think of long term without paying heed or attention to short term orientation. So, when you are talking about short term or long term analysis of financial statement or long term financial statement analysis, short term financial statement analysis, essentially we are more or less carried away by the time horizon, and it is not imperative to outrightly comment about the robustness of long term analysis or short term analysis, because whether it is short term or long term, it is imbibed and exposed to the vulnerability which is emanating from the macroeconomic forces of the economy, of the market or the business ecosystem. So, whether it is short term or it is long term, we have to deal with the changeability getting witnessed in the financial variable. Obviously, when you are going to talk about short term analysis, we are in a better position to foresee or read the future states of affairs of a company. But at the same time, when we are going to talk about long term orientation, nowadays there are different heavyweight financial models which are falling under the purview of financial modeling based on different techniques. They are used, and thanks to the advancement in technology, thanks to the availability of different analytical softwares, by using which we can penetrate into a very long span of time so far as taking informed decisions in the financial domain. Like say for example, suppose a particular body corporate is approaching a financial institutions to have a loan of 500 crores to be repayable in a span of 50 years. This is a very difficult project, or this is a very difficult proposal at the end of the companies to accept or to reject, because the financial institutions who are into the business of either sanctioning loan or rejecting the loan, how do they arrive at that decision whether to sanction that 500 crores to a particular company to be repayable in a span of 50 years? Now, unless and otherwise you will go for a long term analysis spanned over 50 years, you cannot rationally take that decision to reject or to accept that loan application. So, long term analysis has its own role to play, has its own contribution towards the domain of financial decision making and financial statement analysis. Short term analysis has its own role and its own orientation to delve into the near future. So, put it together, these different variants of financial statement analysis is going to accommodate and address the manifold requirements, manifold objectives which are carried away by different users of financial information, may they be external to the business, may they be internal to the business. Obviously, the best way out to go for financial statement analysis is by making a legitimate blend of different approaches of financial statement analysis to suffice the very purpose of an informed and rational financial decision. Thank you.